Star Citizen just passed $700 million in crowdfunding, and it seems like there isn't much slowing it down on its march toward $1 billion. The latest concept ship sale raked in multiple millions, showing that even a single ship concept sale for this game can generate more money than indie studios make for entire game launches. This funding juggernaut seems truly unstoppable, but despite its monetary momentum, Star Citizen may still have its biggest challenges ahead. The project still lacks compelling gameplay loops for long-term interest. There still isn't really an answer on how they're going to balance some of the pay-to-win pitfalls of how they're funding the game, and also what happens to its funding model after the game hits its 1.0 release. Let's talk about Star Citizen's upcoming challenges. So with Star Citizen's latest mega patch, free fly event, and new ship concept sales, the funding for this now 12-year-long project does not seem to be in any danger of slowing down. The Drake Ironclad, the latest concept ship sale, has certainly got fans salivating over CIG's amazing ship models, and has also sold a ton, having a huge impact on the game's recent revenue, despite the ship costing a whopping $400 just as the entry price point. And there's no denying it or even arguing it. Star Citizen spaceships are just cooler than any other game out there. When it comes to details, features, potential functionality, they're pretty much the top dogs. When you step onto a massive ship, you can see the logic to the layout, the hundreds of hours of artistic work in every nook and cranny. And when players spend big on a ship in this game, they get something that feels incredibly real within the game world, and honestly, I get it. I do see why people want to spend so much money to have a game that spares no expense when it comes to the world detail and practical design. That said, as we progress towards a potential single-player game release and more major updates for multiplayer, there's still some massive unknowns, or perhaps we can call them unprovens. For example, despite 12 years of dev time and thousands of insanely cool assets and gameplay systems, Star Citizen still hasn't proven that they can design compelling gameplay loops for the average gamer. Star Citizen's mission or quest system still leaves so much to be desired. It's almost a comical juxtaposition of having one of the most beautiful and technologically impressive games ever made, having you deliver boxes as your early gameplay loops for potentially hours on end. And even when you get more competent at doing some of the FPS combat or ship-to-ship combat, the missions are still incredibly bland and repetitive. A whole solar system of possibilities, and you're mostly stuck in some really bland mission grind cycles. And while there are some really cool missions mixed into the greater mission pool, like say boarding an organ harvesting syndicate ship and killing all the baddies on there, then setting the ship to self-destruct while you run to an airlock, jump into space, and watch it explode behind you, those missions are few and far between. CIG has been busy building out the tools to make better, more engaging missions, and yet the foundation of the gameplay still rests atop the most bland mission design and gameplay loops ever. And it's becoming a bit of a problem. When they announce new spaceships, they often don't fill a role or a need from the current gameplay that's on offer, but instead rely on you to imagine the gameplay evolving to fit the capabilities of the ship. And there's still plenty of ships in the game right now whose main roles and functions don't make sense within the gameplay and the mission systems. There is still a massive amount of tech debt when it comes to the promised mission systems and gameplay loops of future ships. And while CIG has been making some progress in this area when it comes to, say, salvaging and mining, there's still a huge amount of progress to be made in all the other professions. Now, another hurdle for this game will be to finalize the insurance gameplay loop and define what lifetime insurance means and all the prices and claim times. And while from a tech level this could be relatively straightforward, it could pose some pretty big issues for the gameplay economy and environment. Currently, people who buy ships in concept sales get lifetime insurance on those ships. This is a huge incentive system designed to give you a financial advantage in the game for supporting the game. Not only will you get to spawn in this ship at the start of any sort of character wipe, but you get lifetime insurance guaranteeing that you'll never lose the ship. However, currently there's no difference in-game between a ship with LTI and one that you just purchased in-game. Everything effectively has LTI at this moment, and the final insurance system design has not been tested, ever. The challenge here is that CIG has to be extremely careful to create a universe that doesn't feel overly pay to win, while still making the players who have spent thousands of dollars funding the project by buying spaceships feel like they are getting something of value in return. And while it seems like there's no getting away from players being able to pay for a massive time and financial advantage in the long run, hopefully CIG is able to curb this somewhat by setting claim times on massive ships and making ship components a major aspect of why they're good in combat or effective at their professions. If not done properly, the abuse cases, especially if Star Citizen is heading more in the EVE Online direction of large-scale org warfare, means that LTI could be hugely beneficial for, say, sacrificial attacks and expendable fleets. This whole situation could get very messy if CIG doesn't handle it perfectly, and honestly I don't know if there is a perfect way to do it. But eventually CIG is going to have to bite the bullet and put insurance properties into the game that separate the lifetime insurance people from the normies, and we'll see how that goes. Now, at some point down the road, Star Citizen will eventually hit its 1.0 release. In fact, there is rumors that internally they're trying to really push for that happening sometime in the near future. And while that is more of a leak than any sort of official word from CIG, there's no doubt that they are pushing more towards a finalized version of the game. But it's really up to CIG to decide what qualifies as a 1.0 release. We pretty much know that 100 star systems is unrealistic at this point for their 1.0 release, so it's going to have to come at some random point between then and now. What qualifies as a feature-complete version of the game is really up to CIG to decide. But the reason why this matters is that several times over the years they've mentioned that ship sales would not occur beyond the official release of the game, or that maybe ship packages will continue to be sold, or concept sales will still happen. The wording on this situation seems to be far from concrete, and even the most dedicated fans are still debating what the funding model of this game will be post-launch. And of course, this is important because once the game hits 1.0, we're going to want the revenue model to continue to support the game and servers and all that stuff. It would be a huge disaster to finish the game and not have a good revenue model for the future of the game. And really, the obvious choice seems to be to just continue funding the game through ship sales as they've been doing before. But the challenge here is that once CIG qualifies the game as being 1.0, it signifies them being content with the current gameplay loops and state of Star Citizen, which still feels like it's very far away from where it needs to be. If the transition from alpha to beta to 1.0 is not up to player standards, it could massively impact the perceived value of ships, as they only hold value if they can do something important in the game world. And I think pretty much all players are expecting their ship purchases to be significant in their chosen gameplay loop, and if they aren't significant or just don't have a good gameplay loop, there could be a massive pullback on future investments. As of right now, CIG is a bit insulated from those criticisms to a certain extent anyway, and that they can always say, well, those features are coming once the game gets more finished, and your ships will be way better once we have all the correct mission systems and gameplay in there. But once they announce the game being 1.0, they won't have that same excuse to hide behind. So if the rumors are true that CIG truly is pushing towards a 1.0 release candidate in the nearish future, if they jump that gun, the transition could be a disaster for the perception of the game. Now, of course, there's other massive challenges ahead for CIG, and of course I'm ignoring the major tech challenge of server meshing and dynamic server meshing, which will likely need at least a year after its initial rollout to get all the bugs and performance worked out. I continue to be extremely excited for the future of Star Citizen, emphasis on future there, as that's where I can imagine the game being absolutely fantastic in every regard, and not just visually impressive and technologically impressive. And while this project has already accomplished some just truly incredible feats, its biggest challenges may still be ahead. The transitions for this project are going to be huge moments for Star Citizen, and if handled correctly, hopefully they will go smoothly and guarantee a bright future for the game and everyone who has backed it. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think Star Citizen's biggest challenges will be from here on out. Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop me a a like, subscribe for more content like it, ding that notification bell to beat the YouTube algorithm with me, and up next check out this other space game, Homeworld 3. I did a full review on it, and check it out. I think the Homeworld IP has been one of the most influential space games, just period. Definitely worth looking at even if you're not going to play the game. As always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.